I think we might be in a brink of a civil war in many countries if there's mass unemployment.
Have a technology that has come in and can displace about 20% of all jobs by the end of 2027 and 30% of all jobs by the end of 2031. That's meaningful. Over 3 billion people's livelihoods will be impacted. One of the problems with AI, it's so good. It is seriously deceptive. It can make you believe things exist that don't. It is immensely powerful and immense good can come out of it, especially when you combine AI with robotics. The other aspect is it's coming for us all. So it's no longer just the blue-collar jobs or the artisan. It affects you, it affects me.
Hello, everyone. We are hosting this podcast to explore how leadership, history, education, and AI ethics intersect and what responsible progress should look like in an AI-driven world. Today, we are joined by Nana Banerjee, a global business leader who has led McGraw-Hill, Pelmorex, Citi, and Argus. With deep experience in technology, education, data, and board governance, and a strong interest in history and AI ethics, Nana brings a rare perspective on leadership and responsible progress in an AI-driven world. Nana, welcome.
Thank you so much, Aninda. And I really enjoyed having the chance to know you so far, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, Nana, we'll just jump into, a question, which is you've worked across, analytics, education, tech and media. What connects these different chapters of your career?
The common theme to all these businesses that I've been a part of invariably boils down to they're not manufacturing, then less value chain and more of the IP that gets created and the content that's coming out. And the content could be in the form of algorithms, or it could be in the form of educational content, or it could be in the form of media content. And so the broad category tends to be information services / media. And the underpinning to these businesses invariably is you're creating value out of something that exists. There's a base content, and then you're spinning more insights that are more valuable and impactful to the users. It surely does make sense in my head, but I'm happy to dive in if you wish.
No, this is very good. I think this is a good explanation. But you also have a deep background in mathematics and systems science. How did it actually shape your leadership style? You've led very large organizations.
Being a trained mathematician and having spent a good amount of my time in engineering schools working on engineering problems, my postgraduate degrees are from technical institutes. Invariably, kind of my journey has and the kind of industries that I have been connected to have meshed really well, which is there are some sectors that speak for the application of heavy quantitative methods, analytical methods to do what they do. And when you keep that lens on, you bring a lens with you that is analytical. You have therefore been trained to break things into a subparts, to take a complex problem, break it down into smaller parts, and then once you have solved those smaller parts, to bring it all together to be a solution. That value chain is very consistent whether you're doing a physics problem, a mathematics problem, or an industrial problem in the sectors that I've been in. And I find that common thematic to be very valuable and useful in the way I work. And it's also has kind of built some natural biases, or you could say positive biases, which is to have a great emphasis and understanding of the importance of STEM training. why engineering is important, why math and physics training is important. So any chance I have to influence any younger person who's trying to identify what fields they should go into, I always try to push them towards a STEM field.
This is how important do you think arts play in this? Some people say that there should be in STEM, STEM, there should be an A somewhere like STEAM.
Yeah, like STEAM, right. Look, I'm a huge believer, consumer, buyer of art. I think there's something called a food for the soul,
Yeah.
food for the heart, and then there's food for the brains. And of course, you're a musician, you know this intricately well, that music is extremely technical. And, to
Yeah.
be a lot of good musicians could have easily been mathematicians if they wanted to. I mean, it's really hard to pick up the technical aspects of music. So I do see that as an extension, but I also don't want to conflate or confuse why the STEM training is distinctly different from music training. And the STEM training is invariably with the goal of solving real world problems.
That's true.
And that has its value, but that doesn't make you a person. That doesn't make you an evolved person. That makes you valuable. And it's a very important training. So if we take away the job prospects associated with the training, I think you should be very much into STEAM. But if you're looking certain skills, you go into STEM. You want to build other skills, you pick up arts. But I don't think you pick one versus the other. It's just the technical training is very important. That's really the point. And more younger people who are getting into higher ed seem to pick domains that are going to help them get jobs and not necessarily that are good food for the brain and good food for the soul and the heart.
Interesting. When you've led, whenever you become a CEO of a large organization, and some of the organization has been there for a while, right? And change has to happen. What do you? I mean, from you when you go in and you work there, you settle down after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. What do you? How do you know what to preserve and what to change?
Right. And that I think is a very critically important question, or a challenge for any new person coming into a company in any leadership role. So it's not necessarily as a CEO. Because especially a company like McGraw-Hill that I had an opportunity to run, these have been around for 140 years. So these are not fly-by-night operations. And the fact that a company can survive that long tells you they've had to reinvent themselves many times over. And they've shed what they were, and they evolved into something else. They had to shed it all over again. And their longevity speaks for themselves. When you think a company like Microsoft really has been around only for, 35, 40 years, or, Google has been around for only 30 years. Facebook has been around only for 20 years.
Yeah.
So really, no one knows what their 130-year-old story is going to be. I think invariably when you're a leader coming into companies like this, it's a combination of two things. One is to understand and appreciate what created the company and what is the secret sauce of the company. And that comes from a position of humility, not that you figured it out and you're going to apply what you learned to this company, but what makes this company what it is, what made it, the history. And it's not just the P&L history, which I spend a lot of time on, but the product history, the macros associated with the different times that the company has gone through. And that invariably does provide very deep insights and understanding of what is the secret sauce. It could very well be simple things like customers come first. They picked customers and customer service and customer experience before anything else. That is a very important learning. And you want to keep that. This is what
Right.
drives people. There's some companies where there is this thematic view of the people is the family. It's a big undertaking because it comes with a lot of implied promises. You don't want to mess with those because that's what's proven. That's what makes the company click. The things that I'm looking to change in my
Hmm.
early days,
Yeah.
what are the grounds of skepticism? Who believes, who doesn't believe? Who, and because you have to come in with a vision. You got a leadership job because you have a vision. You're testing your vision by talking to the people who believe, who you're also testing it with your people, looking for plans, looking for strategies, looking for execution plans, looking for milestones. But you're also constantly looking out for the skeptics where nothing you do is good enough because they really want to live
Yeah.
in 10 years past and not wanting to go to 10 years in the future. Those
That's
are the changes you do have to make, and you don't have a lot of latitude to wait any more than you should. So those would be my kind of what do I want to change, and what am I looking to change, or and what am I looking to preserve?
the good core values. Obviously, you try to look out what are those good core which made this company come this far, right?
Exactly.
And hence, interesting. Nowadays, Nana, and of course, not pointing out any company. When we have a new CEO coming in, new president come in, um, they kind of sometimes I see they just bring in some new technology and they make a big splash, on Wall Street Journal saying that, oh, we are transforming the company. But those are not real transformation. What to you is real transformation? I mean, where you've gone in and said that to me, a real transformation looks like this.
Right. So I'll break it into two parts because I do believe, though, that you can transform a company by bringing in a technology
True.
that previously didn't exist at the company. And I
Hmm.
saw a lot of companies transition themselves, transform themselves by bringing in cloud because they were just late to the cloud. They didn't immediately latch onto it, and the company was doing fine until they realized that they were really 10 years behind of where they needed to be. And when once, there's a company that comes to mind, Equifax, they brought in their cloud transformation only 2 or 3 years ago, and they were proud of it, and it has been transformational to them. So,
Hmm.
so I do recognize that, but I get your question and the spirit of your question, which is true transformation. When you're really not just changing the efficiency and productivity of your company, but you're making a difference to an industrial sector or to the people you serve, your clients or your customers. And that really comes, in my mind, through a vision for the future. You're expecting for the ball or the puck to go to a point and you're planning your strategy. You have a vision of where that's going to go. It doesn't need to be one point, but you need to have a channel of where are things headed. And if
True.
you can get that right, 5, 10, 15 years out, and you're planning your products, you're planning your services, you're planning your solutions
Hmm.
with that in mind, and in a way where you're not looking to solve small problems, but big problems. And we can have a conversation of what is a small problem, what is a big problem.
Yeah.
The obvious nature is if you're making a big impact to who you serve, and if you have that and you're building for the future, that has to be transformational. I'll end by one excellent book called The Sapiens, which most of your
Yeah.
audience might have heard of if they haven't
Yeah.
already read it, by the Israeli author Yuval Noah Harari. And he talks about what is uniquely different about human beings and Homo sapiens specifically relative to all other homonyms and other species that have lived on the planet. And and he describes with a lot of good references that humans are uniquely capable of imagining that something that doesn't exist. And
Hmm.
the imagining of something that doesn't exist, going and getting a whole group of people to go build something that didn't exist and now it exists, that is unique to us. Neanderthals versus humans. I find that fascinating, and I'm constantly reminded of ourselves. That's the big opportunity. What could we be? What can it be?
I read an article. I'm not sure who wrote it. They actually talks about this fourth quadrant where human beings can think what is not there. Actually, it's just not there, but is required, and hence, what do you need to do?
Exactly. Exactly. And I find that as and of course through someone else's research, that's the human being's superpower.
100%. Any mistakes that you did, like when you a learning that you had, young leader, CEO, president in some company, you did something which you can say, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
what was the learning?
Many. Gosh, I'm a product of my mistakes, not a product of my right decisions, right? And um, there's so many, but I'll start with the things that I would do when I was younger, and then I can share with you some things that have evolved into that. But I've always been someone who really takes a lot of grounding and perspective from having values and principles that I grew up with and I got from my elders and the cultures that I grew up in.
Yeah.
That has never been um, at odds or something that I had to think about twice. But things that I have changed over time include aspects of the speed of decision making.
Right.
That I've seen the mistakes of my mentors or my seniors when I've worked, and I would often see decisions are made for expediency or for the short buck, and I thought that was, hey, expediency comes at a high premium. You can't wait because waiting is time lost, and therefore that I've come to realize the more, especially as I get older, that it's okay to take a few days more than you would otherwise, to be more thoughtful, to be more deliberative, to think through the impacts, not necessarily change your decisions, but take the time to understand what could those decisions lead to, and if you're okay with it. Another learning is whatever you do, however good your plan is, you have to have at least a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and a plan E. And if plan A fails, now B is A, and now you need a new E and a new F. Those backup plans and the anticipation of those backup plans make sure you don't really actually have to need them. But when you don't have those planned, that's when you need them the most. I am a big believer in making decisions that are backed by values and principles. But the one place that I do see myself not being very, very discreet about, okay, this we are doing or not doing something else, is when we are making a decision to proceed, we are not saying, okay, now we're going to do something for the next 6 months. I always have learned to give myself the iterative aspect of, let's do something for the next 2 weeks. Let's do something for the next month and meet every day to see how it's going. That iterative learning and iterative process for me has been superbly valuable. And we were doing this, in the early 2000s, well before Agile and Scrum became a household name. But I'm a big believer of Agile and Scrum because it is so intuitive in how to build.
So the takeaway is that, basically, giving time, right, to all decisions and having other plans built in anticipation. So that's the takeaway that you've had in your.
That's exactly right. And what I would also kind of worth pointing out, don't waste time trying to get to the second place or decimal point on an answer, right? If you can get 90%, 95%, launch it. Because that going from 90% ready to the 100% ready will take you a year and the product will be obsolete. So it's better to go into the market with something that's pretty good, something that'll really make the client happy. And of course, knowing that it's not perfect, and therefore you owe the transparency to your client. You're not going to pretend it's perfect. But it's far better to do it that way than wait for that extra year and lose so much more than what you would have to gain.
True. I think I'd heard this the same things, about 7, 8 years back. I was hearing a podcast, and out there, Elon Musk said that if there's one poison to ambition, that's perfection.
Yeah.
Anybody
Yeah,
who
no,
does that
I
actually,
totally believe that. Right, right. And that's my point about the second place of decimal. Like,
yeah,
who cares if it's 9.8 or 9.7? Like, no one cares. But there are a
yeah,
lot of folks who put that
yeah,
specificity.
yeah. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. In a world of generative AI today, is it better to ask better questions because it gives you answers anyway? What's your take? I mean, the generative AI world,
Look, I think your question is prompts. How important is prompt,
prompt engineering. Yeah,
right? Um, I'll come. I'll make a bigger point though, which is I think human beings, children, me at my advanced age, we all learn by asking. The question comes first before we get to know the answer. It's our wonderment about something. Why is the sky blue? Yesterday I was very interested in, do blind people die early? Why that question came up, no idea. Then you go do your research, you educate yourself, and the answer actually
wow,
happens to be
I
yeah,
never thought about that. Yeah,
right? Yeah, but the question came about because there is this connection of neurodegenerative diseases, and our brain functions through the sensors we get, and and visual sensor is just so important. And so that's what triggered my question. And but the data is the data. I didn't know the answer to it, and that's when you go to the search engines and AI prompts to teach yourself what is it. I think I'm a big fan of AI and big fan of the prompt engineering way of getting to know the world. But the one thing that I'm seriously worried about is that AI can be wrong. Uh,
yeah,
they say it. I mean, the answers say it. Hey, we can be wrong right at the bottom every time, especially if you're using a responsible AI
yeah, yeah.
engine. But people don't understand that they actually need to go then validate. So think of it as something that's just given you the direction. It's a little bit like you stop in the middle of the road and you're asking someone for a direction for some place. They tell you to you make 3 rights and a left, and look for an orange colored home, but you're not going to be betting your life on that. And don't
Correct,
be disappointed if you don't find anything there.
correct, correct.
That's the way to look at it. Look at it as a nudge in the right direction, and then leave yourself to the room to go do real research. So when I get a response from AI, I'm always clicking on the references they're talking about. And
Hmm.
invariably, if it's NIH or something that has
Research.
substance, research-based substance, then I'm
Then interesting. Interesting. Any part of education you think should never be, you know, delegated to artificial intelligence?
Look, I like I said, I'm a huge fan of AI, particularly in the uses of education, because it has the ability to reach people at scale that otherwise classroom experiences just couldn't get you. Um, it also has the ability to increase the level of sophistication and decrease the level of sophistication to explain complex concepts.
Yeah,
Um, if how does a car work? Well, you could talk about combustion engines and you could talk about wheels and motors, right? Those different levels of complexity can actually tear down, tear up how you teach, and all done in little clicks of the finger. You got to just be amazed and be thrilled with
yeah.
that, what that power means at your fingertips. So I'm a big fan, but what I do worry about is the aspects of what will be behind the paywall and what will be available to all. And you're already seeing more and more AI companies are charging, $25, $50,
Yeah.
$100, all these different paywalls, which are completely inaccessible to most parts of the world. I would just make this is a number. More than 95, 98% of the world can't afford those kinds of subscriptions. That immediately means you are now again creating an unequitable world and access to those tools. That's a problem.
That was my follow-up question, actually. Do you think this will actually democratize education, or it will widen the gap? But you feel it's going to widen the gap because most of the world population, they do not have access to these.
Look, it may and may not. And so one of the things that I did anticipate having a chance to talk about is, look, we could learn it the right way or the wrong way. The wrong way is we learn it the long way, which is if we keep 95, 98% of the world having to have a paywall to access these solutions, we are creating inequity. And ultimately, having an unequitable world does lead to suboptimal outcomes, including for those who have. So even if you don't care about the have-nots, to very few haves and a large population that does not have the have-nots is just not good for anyone. And because you have social instability, you have disenchantments, you have the perfect ground for all kinds of political and social and instability, joblessness. And the lessons governments around the world have learned through the last 150 years for sure is there is a role for the government to play. Like the original breakdown of the tulip trading incidents in Netherlands caused the original creation of the SEC. Hey, we need to have an oversight of the use of trading activities. You need the oversight of trading activities. You need a FDA in the United States, and there are similar regulators across the world that are seeing what is the quality of the medication that is being accessible and being sold to consumers, whether it's the Consumer Protection Acts or Healthcare Acts, etc. That someone needs to have an oversight of things that are extraordinarily important, not regulation for the sake of regulation, but there's some areas. Healthcare is one of those. Trading is one of those. And I believe the access of AI, given its profound impact to so many different sectors, makes it an absolute imperative that we've got to have oversight. What I'm most worried about is the impact that AI and rampant, thoughtless application of AI across sectors will lead to a lot of job losses and an immense harm if we do not get ahead of it. And if we do, there's a lot to be excited about. But until we do, there can and likely going to be a lot of harm.
I agree with you. We are talking a lot about responsible AI. In your experience and, by the way you think, how do you think companies can ensure that, responsible AI is real governance rather than just PR activity?
Right. And I think that's the quadrillion-dollar question, right? It's bigger than trillion. It's because if we don't have the regs and we are leaving to the companies, what history has consistently shown that the companies, typically private companies, typically like to what has come out of the top four mega players, the hyperscalers.
Yeah.
Invariably, you leave it to self-policing. They'll do a few things and they'll find new rules to break the old rules to get that little extension, a competitive advantage or a market share that invariably is infringing on their own very rules of no harm or privacy compliance, etc. And which is why the need for the oversight. So, quite simply stated, you cannot trust, and one should not trust the companies to regulate themselves. This has proven to be a bad move over and over years, over decades, and therefore your next set of options really are light oversight and make sure that if anyone's breaking the laws and the rules, and this is where I would kind of come back to that if we don't and we wait to see now, if it's too early to make those rules, it's too early to intervene. Let's let the technology play out, let it do what it has to. Too much harm will be done. And I'll give you two examples of it. One is kind of COVID. Did the 15 million people really need to die? Could we have done some basic things like masking up and some social distancing? That alone could have said, maybe saved 3, 4, 5 million, maybe not all 15 million. But did that many number of people need to die before the vaccines came over? And we have the luxury of looking at the rearview mirror and discussing these things because we survived. But
Yeah.
have a technology that has come in and can displace about 20% of all jobs by the end of 2027 and 30% of all jobs by the end of 2031. That's meaningful. Over 3 billion people's livelihoods will be impacted. And without a substitute, which I believe in, people will figure it out. The governments will figure it out. We need to get ahead of it and not play it after it has happened.
Very powerful. I have this funny thing. I mean, history, if history has any effect and if it tells you a story, I think we might be in a brink of a civil war in many countries if there's mass unemployment.
Yes, 100% agreed. Including, no one wants to talk about it. I think if we talk about it, we'll surely get flamed and we'll be, we call hyperbolic, or it could be, we are sensationalists, etc. But it's very simple. And when death happens, it's real time. It doesn't. The 15 million people don't disappear overnight. The jobs won't disappear overnight. And this has happened before. If you go back to history,
Yeah.
AI is as profound as it gets. From the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, they were displaced megafauna. There were serious megafaunal extinction.
Yeah.
In 17th and 1800s, you had the first and the second industrial revolution with the steam engine, followed by the electricity and manufacturing.
Yeah.
The steam engine took away millions and millions of artisan workers in India. The jobs were shifted over to Manchester in the United Kingdom. With electricity, you had, of course, you had new jobs, but they came afterwards, right? There's always this time lag. With the information age and semiconductors, there has been a price. There are fewer small retailers. There are fewer blue-collared workers. And this country is still recovering from that, right? We haven't fully recovered. And I think we are absolutely at the throes of it. And why should we have to wait when we don't have to? And it's a good force. If it's harnessed right, AI is a great force.
Oh, absolutely. I think we are going to see, and I definitely believe that in the next 2 years, a lot of the big diseases that we have today, medicines are going to come out very quickly. It won't take 20 years,
Absolutely.
15 years, so AI will have a profound effect on human health, which is a good thing. Do you think boards should be responsible also, on the AI application within organizations? They should be held responsible and accountable?
They are for anything, the good and the bad of what the company does. So I'm going to reframe your question as in, do they even know what's going on? So I recently saw a statistic that 55%, which is a way too small a number, of CEOs are excited about AI. It's pretty sad that 45% of the CEOs are not. This is across sectors. And 33% of the board members are actually excited or familiar with AI. That is way too small a number. If 2 out of 3 board members don't really know what it could do, then how could they pick the next leader? How could they be in a position to not have a leader in order to replace them? They are the ones who are picking the next generation of leaders. So absolutely, fully agree. And it's too powerful a force. Too much good can come with it, and a
Yeah.
lot of poor mistakes can be made with it as well. I mean, classic, right? Um, what you can see, good, responsible boards of well-run companies can keep them running for over 100 years.
That's true. That's true. Are there any organizations that you know? I know there are some organizations who might be writing this down, an AI ethics document.
You know, there are, and several have reached out to me as I've been more vocal. Um, the common themes to what is AI ethics, and it's scratching the surface, but these are important efforts. One is the disclosure aspect. Hey, what you're seeing is AI generated. Can you just make sure that you're not pretending to create something that's not real, because they are really good.
Yeah, yeah,
One of the problems with AI, it's so good, it is seriously deceptive. It can make you believe things exist that don't.
yeah.
Right? It
Absolutely.
is already. I listen to from podcasts and articles, etc., that young people are having relationships, like intimate relationships with AI through their communication. That's a problem. That's a serious problem. They need to come with blaring, but that's low value, but it's like low effort, high impact, but maybe people look past it. Second aspect, if anything, any content is being created with AI, and if someone wants to create, they want to present on their network, or in a future day, DigiDrub had its own network, or a CNN, etc. How do they know that what they are accepting as content is genuine content? So all genuine content creators and content carriers need to have watermarks that are some of which are visible, some of which are invisible to those who are creating fake content. And those technologies
Hmm.
exist, but not everyone's using it, right? Another aspect is, are you compensating the likeness of those who you use? We back in my last role at the company I was with, we had meteorologists, and we were compensating through contractual agreements
Hmm.
a cents on the dollar every time your likeness is used and distributed. You will
Oh,
get some.
wow. Wow. Wow.
So all of those aspects, I think, need to be. So the list is long, and
Yeah.
yes, every company needs an ethics AI, but there needs to be, through this oversight government role, a federal government role, that needs to have these absolute basic minimums that you cannot. Similar to trading, you cannot be trading on instruments without having a license. What's the whole point? You need to be trained about disclosures, etc. Ultimately, no one's trying to take the power away from someone who wants to have a relationship with a computer. Yeah, they can have a relationship with the computer, but the kids need to know that this is not real. That's essentially at the heart of what I feel needs to be done.
Today for this podcast, I was thinking about something, but people are not. So let me give you an example. I mean, when the knife came out, I thought, maybe the knife, the butter knife, or thing, or a good knife came
Yeah,
out. We all have it in our houses. It's a weapon also. It's a very
correct.
strong weapon, but 99% of the world population don't use it. There's a certain percentage who uses it as a weapon, as a bad weapon also,
Yeah,
to harm people. I think it's the human instinct also, to not use the knife in a wrong way, the normal neurotic. If there's a way, I'm thinking, because I'm seeing so much of fake videos, as you said, they look real, absolutely real. It's impossible to distinguish. And I really like the fact that when you said that there should be a metadata in it, which it'll, some scanner which will say it's a fake or a real one. I think that's very powerful. Digital rights management would probably be, part of the
Absolutely. The provenance of where it's coming from.
provenance when it's coming
Yeah.
from. If there's a way that, you know, kids growing up, like we teach our kids do and not to do. I mean, when you have tools like this in your hands and they're free, if like the literally, it's a little philosophical, but if parents say that, listen, don't use this. You can use it.
100%.
Even the car is a weapon. I mean, you can go and hit a car and kill a person.
Yeah, and a weapon is a weapon. Guns can be used for good. Guns
Good,
can be used for bad.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, guns can be used to keep off an enemy state. It can be used to guard a very important school or a church. All of that
Yeah.
is very important. I think at the beginning of this question, you used the word ethics, and
Yeah.
that word is the importance of that word to mankind has not ceased. But it's something we do not talk about. It's somehow because it's too political. The word ethics became political at some point when it shouldn't have. I remember in the mid 80s or thereabouts, many, many decades ago, there was talk about Dolly the sheep. Do you remember that, or were you too young when Dolly the sheep came about? It was, they basically created a DNA replica sheep
Yeah.
of Dolly, and Dolly was a female sheep, and it was genetically identical, and it was exciting because you're throes of this immense kind of progress to what man could do. There was also very clear across the board, every country generally agreed we're not okay with it, and it was not okay. They were not okay with it, not because there was a backlash with respect to a scientist perspective of what they were doing was wrong, this and that. It was just people were not comfortable because the human ethic comes from within, I believe, and
That's true.
people were not comfortable, and there were general agreements across the board, whether it was Russia all the way to the United States and every shade of gray in the middle. We all agreed that shouldn't be, and it isn't. People are not creating human replicas of their dogs or their cats or sheep or humans. That is not that dissimilar to the ask of the day to day. Let's just make boundaries of what we shouldn't do. It shouldn't be a political conversation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, so basically, but overall, you do believe that AI will primarily expand human potential,
Yes.
and as long as you can govern technology responsibly by creating guardrails, and I like the stuff that you said at the end. It shouldn't be a political discussion. It's just very basic. It's fundamentally very, very powerful, obviously, for
Right.
everything.
I'm a huge fan, and not forget about like my being a fan. Why is that important? I think what is important to know, it is immensely powerful, and that immense good can come out of it, especially when you combine AI with robotics. They're,
Yeah.
or somewhat orthogonal, somewhat related, and
Yeah.
together they can. And it's not like we don't have enough problems that need to be solved. We're not looking for problems that need to be solved because we are bored out of our minds. The world has a lot of problems that still need to be solved. To your point
That's true.
about finding drugs or pharma, any kind of, whether it's intravenous or oral drugs. There's just so many things that need to be and will be solved faster using AI. Surgical equipment, surgeries that can be done,
Oh, absolutely.
deep sea treasures and scientific outcomes that we're likely going to be discovering faster. It's almost silly not to be excited about it. And really, the only thing here is we need to be thoughtful. Let's take that extra day
Yeah.
and let's make sure it's equitable. We're not creating inequity. Let's have a plan and not an irrational plan for the loss of jobs, which is we're just going to compensate people for their loss of jobs. That's not why people work. This is not always just about the money. It's also about self-worth and identity. Those are
Yeah.
important problems that need to be solved.
That's true. That's true.
And we humans can solve. That AI will not solve by itself. AI won't solve those problems for us.
I agree. So, final question before we conclude this podcast: as as a student of history, which earlier technological revolution do you think offers the best lesson for the AI era?
I did talk about the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, and the industrial ages, the steam engines and the electricity, and then more recently, the modern physics of the semiconductors and what information age has done. I think they've always been profound, and AI too is profound, and it's at a very early stage. It's like, using baseball terminology, we're in the bottom half of a 9 inning game, and we're still in the first inning. So it's really the game just started. So it's speculation, but I'm very comfortable because we're already seeing phases associated with it, which does suggest it's going to be huge. And even if it is the least impactful relative to the other big epochs where a transition of an underlying capability changed, whether it was during the Iron Age, because you could now make tools that were bigger, the steam engine, where you could now bring out coal, you could have scale, etc., all those things. Let's see, it's any one of those. But the population of the world has gone from 1.8 billion in 1969, the year I was born, to now. It's over 8 billion. So even if the impact is just 20-30%, so it's not colossal, but the number of lives impacted is way too many, and therefore the impact is too high. So I'm not even willing to say it's bigger than what the discovery and use of iron did, or the use of steam engine did, which we can all theorize. The other aspect is it's coming for us all. So it's no longer just the blue collar jobs or the artisan, the poor. It affects you. It affects me.
Yeah.
And we really need to be very careful, and we need to be very careful of who's benefiting and how are they benefiting. And we should not let a few take all the benefits. That's not cool, and that's not right.
Agree with you. So thank you, Nana. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I think our audience, our viewers would find this highly informative. I was checking in this morning, our millennial base is about 46%. People who listen, I'm sure they're going to, it's very important that they get it. And, but any closing comments before we?
Well, that's very kind. Aninda, I'm a big fan. I've followed what you do, the impact you're making to the community. And I'm just delighted I had the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your audience. And I look forward to following up on so many other things that we have to work on together.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nana. Hi, this is Aninda Bose with DigiDrub. If you like this content, if you'd like to learn about content around AI, business, or general entertainment, do subscribe to this channel. We would have some very good content coming up for you. Thank you.